Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to each one of you for the first day of the 25th edition, the Silver Jubilee on World Sustainable Development Summit. Before we begin, a brief safety announcement. We are gathered this afternoon at the Mumtaz Hall, Taj Palace, located on the ground floor of the building. The hall has one entry and one exit door. There is no mock drill planned for today. All hotel associates are trained to handle emergency situations. In case of an emergency, we request you to remain calm and follow the instructions. For 25 years, WSDS has stood as India's premier platform for shaping global discourse on sustainability and climate action, bringing together leaders, thinkers, and change makers across the world. My name is Rahul Chahar, Project Associate, National Center of Excellence for Green Ports and Shipping, TERI. And it's my privilege to serve as your MCs for today's thematic session on green ports as a gateway to decarbonization. May I now request the following dignitaries to take up their respective seats on the dais. Shri R.R. Rashmi, ex-secretary, MoEFCC, currently Program Director for NCoEGPS. Shri Shyam Jagannathan, Director General of Directorate General of Shipping. And joining us shortly will be Shri Sushant Kumar Purohit, Chairperson, VOC Port Authority, Tuticorin. As maritime trade expands and climate imperatives intensify, ports are no longer passive infrastructure assets. They are becoming strategic gateways to systematic decarbonization, connecting shipping, energy systems, logistics, industry, and coastal communities. Today's session, Green Ports as a Gateway to Decarbonization, will explore how India's evolving port ecosystem can shape not only national emission pathways, but also contribute meaningfully to global maritime transition efforts. To formally commence the session, I now invite Shri R.R. Rashmi, Program Director, to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Rahul. Very good afternoon and welcome to all of you. I see a number of familiar faces in the room here. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. In particular, I would like to thank Mr. Jagannathan for being with us here. He has been a friend, philosopher and guide, and a leading light in the shipping sector. He oversees all of us. So we are thankful to him for being with us here today. Mr. Purohit, we expect him to join very soon. So once again, thank you for giving your time to us. And it's on behalf of TERI, it's my privilege to welcome all of you. We have planned this session as a discussion on the role of ports in decarbonization. You know, ports and the shipping, we have to see this together, but the ports play a great instrumental role in advancing the decarbonization efforts which a country makes. In our own country, we have a climate target. We don't call it a decarbonization target. In the short term, it's emissions intensity reduction target. But in the long term, we have a net zero goal. So shipping sector also will have to play a great role there in this decarbonization effort. Globally, shipping sector and the ports put together, they contribute substantially, about 3 to 4% of the total emissions. But that's not, the number is not so critical. What is critical is that they are the driving force behind international trade. And trade contributes to very substantial quantum of emissions in the global economy. So the role of this sector is really very critical. So that's how we are all here to discuss this important issue. Because the ports sit at the intersection of global trade, national infrastructure, energy systems, and the local communities. Now, environmental considerations when in the port sector were generally, and even today, they are considered as an additional responsibility. But it's important to understand that they are now a part of our developmental trajectory. They are internal to the development process that we are planning for ourselves. So it will be extremely important to internalize these climate goals, both in the process of development of ports and also in enabling them to play a role in the decarbonization of the shipping sector also in the long run. We have started on this path successfully. We have whatever targets India in particular has taken up, we have done very well on that. Whether it is emissions intensity or addition to renewable energy capacity, or whether it is addition to carbon sink, we are doing, from global standards, we are doing extremely well. But that is obviously not enough. What is critical is that the trade, which now trade is under increasing threat because of a number of multilateral, bilateral, and unilateral measures. But that the kind of impacts which these measures will have on the global economy will also impact on the development of the ports and the development of the shipping sector in general. But we need not be deterred by these challenges in the global level. The national considerations are extremely important. The national developmental policies are going to actually determine the way we are going to lead this sector. So therefore, we will need your inputs and advice on this. And what is significant is not just the ambition, but also in the implementation measures that we evolve in shaping the actions that we are planning. So I look forward to the insights of all the distinguished speakers and the participants present here, and to a discussion that moves the planned decarbonization of the ports and the shipping sector to actual actions. We have a shipping policy which is going to see the light of the day, and we have been fortunate enough to be involved in that process with the help of all the stakeholders. A number of brilliant ideas have been put there, so hopefully this will also guide our future actions here. So once again, welcome to all of you, and we look forward to extremely insightful discussion now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for setting the context so comprehensively. India's maritime transformation is anchored in long-term policy framework, including Maritime India Vision 2030 and Maritime Amrit Kal Vision 2047, supported by initiatives such as Harit Sagar Guidelines for Port. To provide the Government of India's strategic perspective on integrating decarbonization with maritime goals, we are privileged to have with us Shri Shyam Jagannathan, DG DGS, to deliver the keynote address.
Namaskar. Respected R.R. Rashmi sir, I'm grateful for the kind words. I firmly believe that under the banner that the Directorate General of Shipping is advocating, which is Maritime India @net zero, we are all partners and we all need to contribute to this effort, since sustainability is not simply something that we factor for, it is an investment for the future generations. I also apologize if I'm not able to partake in the deliberations, which I keenly would have, but I do have a very eminent support and lead team, which is here along with my colleagues in the Directorate General, and we are partnering TERI in this commendable initiative. I will be running through this presentation. Please do indulge me if the speed is a little more. I will leave behind the speaker notes. However, we had under the same banner of Maritime India at the rate net zero, a 2-day consultative workshop with TERI initially as an inception workshop. We are taking that forward with a open consultative webinar with our finalized inputs, and then approaching institutionally to embed that in the National Strategic Action Plan. I'll not spend much time on the Indian economic growth story. It's simply to reiterate, I'll be welcoming Sushanta sir here, my eminent colleague. So the Indian economic story is happening. Globally, we will be the fourth largest by 27, 28, 5 trillion GDP. It's undeniable. Where we need to be careful is, as has rightly been said by Rashmi sir, we have done our bit, but we need to be global leaders in the sustainability engagement too. And as we consume, as we grow at almost a rate of 7% at CAGR, we need to also have these guardrails where we factor in everything that basically works towards a lower carbon footprint. These, of course, are statistics. Since most of you are familiar with the maritime domain, I will leave it only to the very basic statement that ports will only become bigger. Vessels calling on as mother vessels will go bigger. The quantity of cargo being handled will be much larger, and the time stress in terms of turnaround time will be faster. So either we have extremely inefficient systems which are prone to risks and accidents and are energy hungry, or we have energy efficient systems which perform towards the net zero goal. This, of course, is the contribution of the blue economy. Everyone knows this. 95% by volume is on maritime routes. And as the Indian economy grows, these will be the global supply lines which strategically need to be secure so that the economy grows without stress and being insulated from geopolitical shocks. Whatever is to be said about the renewable engagement in the recent coming 5 to 10 years is embedded here in the India vision for the maritime sector, in the Maritime India Vision 2030. And also the Amrit Kal Maritime Vision 2047. Interestingly, the 2047 vision says carbon neutral ports, it says greater than 60% renewable energy share, hydrogen hubs. And this is the visionary part that we have to envisage in our journey. The singular paradigm, why sustainability matters. Starting from the Millennium Development Goals, we have now stabilized it to the Sustainable Development Goals, all through monitorable matrices and indices. So you have the SDG 7, 9, 12, 13, and 14. It is essentially a mix and match of these that as a template will have to be applied across India, not just with the mercantile marine, but all maritime operations, including fixed assets like ports. Now, ports are important largely because they help in efficient operations, but also another part, they can be pioneers because ports have what is called as IEBR, internal and economic resources and extra budgetary revenue. I mean, they always do generate revenue, which is not the case for other parts of the maritime. Now, resources means you then spend it right to basically ensure a better and a lower carbon footprint. The other singular paradigm I'd like to present is that two specific pillars, technology and sustainability, is what will weave the story ahead. Technology will essentially be a disruptor. Sustainability is basically the guardrails that you will have to adhere to while you engage with the progressive agenda. Now, coming down to the specific topic I'll start with mercantile marine and a broader perspective under the green shipping policy, and stating that although it is just around close to 3% of the global CO2 emissions, the fact that you are basically the 80% responsible carrier for the global supply lines gives you that much more of a criticality. And you will be the point of the spear, that is the pioneering segment that turns around cutting edge technologies which have to be proven and tested out and rolled out in other domains. So maritime essentially would mean that you pioneer net zero technologies much before other sectors do. This is what we are attempting to push through for the nation along with TERI having the lead as the National Center of Excellence for Green Ports and Green Shipping. There are 7 specific pillars here under the green shipping policy. We have given it a hexagonal kind of a structure, largely to delineate the major contours. The NPSC, that is the National Port Sustainability Council, is what I will be presenting in a slightly more detailed manner because that is what relates to green ports. Ship recycling, the shore power, alternate fuels, sustainability index for existing vessels and for new builds will form together the umbrella under which the National Green Shipping Policy will operate. As I said, 7 pillars. We have Mr. Bansal from LR Advisory. They are providing us the technical support alongside basically IR class for the alternate fuels in maritime, which was presented when the Secretary General of the IMO visited last year, and this document was launched. These 7 pillars are green ships, green ports, that is the point of discussion today, green fuels, technology, recycling, finance, skill development, and capacity building. Now, of the 7 pillars, since I'm leaving the presentation here, I'll just focus on the left-hand side with the green ports. Port-led decarbonization by integrating clean energy, electrification, shore power, and operational efficiency. The other aspects will be working as a conjunct. So green ships, green fuel, green skill development, green finance, and green ship recycling. This is the banner under which we are pushing it across. Maritime India @net zero. Now the government's engagement is evident in the Harit Sagar Port Green Port Guidelines. Now this has a performance indicator which from serial 1 to 11 include percentage of renewable energy, percentage of port equipment electrified, percentage of area under the green belt, reduction in the CO2 emission, and specific parameters including alternate fuels like green hydrogen, ammonia bunkering facilities, refueling, and EV charging stations. Now the concept of a green port, it is to be operational with a minimal environmental impact. And what we are proposing here is 4 of these indices: the Green Port Index, the Green Port Readiness Level, the Shore Power Readiness Indicator, and the Environmental Ship Index. Now these 4 indicators are essentially on the fundamental premise that if you measure something, it gets done. If you leave it open-ended, it doesn't basically get tied down to an action plan. So the Green Port Index is essentially on the carbon footprint, on the alternate fuels adoption, energy efficiency, and the logistics efficiency, including port reception facility and waste management. Port readiness level is present existing port. We assess the preparedness for the energy transition, digitalization, and the compliances with what could be globally benchmarked environmental regulations. Shore power readiness is essentially the infrastructure for cold ironing and the renewable energy integration to reduce emissions from visiting vessels, including, of course, support vessels. And the environmental ship index is largely something to do with the shipping operators and how they are reducing the Annexure 6 emissions, also reducing the carbon print in terms of operations. Now this everyone is perhaps aware, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Look at a paradigm shift. Say if you have a flotilla and a nuclear small modular reactor, which the chairman managing director of the IRS has been advocating. This is one instance of a power source which is net zero. Deployed, takes away all your scope 2 and scope 3 remnants. Scope 1 is completely obliterated in the sense port-owned energy is provided by the modular reactor. And not only for the port, you can also power requirement in the hinterland. So then you just focus on the scope 2 and scope 3. So we're looking at solutions such as those which can be made applicable. The Green Tug Transition Program is something which is already out in the open. The tenders are out. There are companies such as Kongsberg which have got scalable platforms which are providing both dual fuel and hybrid solutions which are required as per the bollard pull that is needed. The idea here is instead of having the 19 to 20-year-old near junk tugs that are presently operational in the ports, we provide them efficient tugs which then basically green your operations when vessels are berthed and tug operations are basically provisioned. This is the rationale and why we basically have brought it as a government funded proposal which is supported by capital infusion too. The governance and structure has already been shown here. There's a standing committee and the indices that I mentioned earlier will ensure these being measured as metrics for ports. This is about alternate fuels. This is a complete subject for engagement itself. A lot of good work is being done. Mr. Naik is here from Anglo-Eastern. They're doing on bunkering, etc. And a lot of progress is also being done. Otherwise, LNG perhaps appears to be the best bet as a transitional fuel. Biofuels, we have tried out the blends. Existing infrastructure goes for it. So we basically focus on that because of the biomass, the availability. Of course, the productions are pretty low. Ammonia, deep sea going, but extremely corrosive, toxic. But India, by having a very good fertilizer industry, has the manpower to handle ammonia. Methanol vessels are already in, technology both proven, are already deployed. Hydrogen as an upstream fuel, basically for the downstream green ammonia, would also be a reality because 3 of the major ports are actually working on green hydrogen. Kandla is already commissioned port. I believe Tuticorin also is taking a lead on the same. The fundamental premise is today we are energy insecure. I have said this earlier also. If there is a geopolitical shock in the Gulf, everyone is on tenterhooks. Why do you need to be told whether you should source your crude from Russia or not? Why should you look at shadow fleets and concerns of ship-to-ship transfers in the deep seas? Why should you look at sanctions? That's largely because they have your jugular in energy terms. The simple thing is, you invest in green, go green energy surplus, become basically a green bunkering destination and a green energy surplus exporting nation. You change that paradigm to becoming an energy secure nation and also a nation that other nations depend on for their energy sourcing. Shore to ship is one complete paradigm which needs to be done, including automated mooring, berthing, all of these. I'll speak about some other technology aided solutions, but this is one shot for vessels which come in berth. They basically during all the operations are supported, the auxiliary is off, emissions are cut down. This basically provides it port source green power. So this is a major knock to the major chunk of carbon emissions that is happening. We only need to find out how to fund it because ports have money, but they also need the money for other things. So we need to have a low capital intensive model with maybe the Power Finance Corporation stepping in. We'll work at that. This is the integrated vessel traffic management system, and I'll come to congratulating Purohit sir because something phenomenal has been done and inaugurated by the Honorable Minister very recently. And I think that is completely path-breaking, and I believe we should applaud his leadership too. So the concept here with IVTMS is You basically create, in a sense, the egg disk mapped to the IVTMS, and also the IVTMS gets integrated to the port management system. You have a digital twinning happening. This is what has been done in VOC. And the proof of concept is, if you do that, the digital twinning allows you a just in time. So you don't have any outer anchorage weight, you don't have to basically, and that enabled and synchronized with the maritime single window means a prior arrival notification, and gone are those days of outer anchorage 2-3 days, or issues relating to crew, sign on, sign off, and then your cargo clearances, etc. All in a jiffy, and the energy there saved contributes to your efficiency. That's what I had mentioned about the just-in-time and digital twin. And this is what we had all applauded Purohit sir for, because this has been done. And I believe this proof of concept will be extended to all ports, and with a centralized command control system that allows you, perhaps on a screen like this, to see any vessel anywhere, real time. Of course, with the necessary security clearances. Ship recycling is something where you are basically recycling the entire vessel. So 97% of what you've invested originally in the high carbon intensive steel. Of course, structural elements are still not basically being allowed to be used. So TMT bars, the structural elements of the vessel still in the keel, cannot basically be used because of the lower tensile strength and the structural load bearing ability of the green steel. Green steel standards still have an issue with the BIS standards. So we're working on that. But this also is one major area of connect to ensure a lower carbon footprint. These are proof of concepts, leading ports which have already implemented what I'm talking about. We should not forget the human element. That remains paramount. So the just-in-time transition also should mean just transition for the human element. You cannot have people being thrown out of jobs if I do not know how to handle a particular console which has a technology integration for an energy efficient operation, or I don't know how to do basically an automated gantry operation, I shouldn't be thrown out of my job. That skilling has to happen. I should be a part of that story. That's where the human element and the human transition needs to be woven into our sustainability drive. And also, we need to make our workplaces more and more enjoyable, and that is where the health, safety, security and environmental connect happens. All the ISO standards are there. All we need to do is codify them, implement them, audit them and ensure compliances. Now, this is where Indian ports stand today. You have Mangalore Port, 100% solar integration. I just spoke about VOC doing something very, very path-breaking. Marmugua Port, renewable energy use. Major ports are all shifting over to LED lighting, which is essentially low energy intensive. Then bunkering in terms of the renewable fuels which are being looked at, net zero fuels being looked at, is also there. The idea here is this, ladies and gentlemen. Today's session is an engagement of this ongoing story. Harit Sagar and Greenport Index, alternate fuels, OPS and just in time, the SDG alignment and the HSSC and the just transition all converge together for sustainable, efficient green ports of the future. It's just an instance of what we are doing in maritime training and skilling, leveraging technology. I've just shown you a snapshot of how you digitize the entire competency examinations, take away the ambiguity of human handling, favoritism, etc. Similarly, efficient systems based on technology would allow you a lower energy footprint and dependability. India, in its federal structure, please do remember, also has state governments. So we are advocating this 6-pillared coastal workshop. Land is an asset primarily with the state. Ports also cannot work in isolation because you're also looking at the upstream logistics after the vessel discharge or the loading is done. So we're doing this 6 pillars. I'll be requesting TERI to engage with the coastal workshops because one of the pillars is decarbonization sustainability. I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm sorry I took a little bit more of time. I am also extremely short of time, and I do look forward to each one of your advice and suggestions because this is not going to succeed unless we all put our hands in together and push for a better future. Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for that forward-looking and strategic keynote. Ports sit at the convergence of infrastructure expansion and climate accountability. Translating policy ambition into operational transformation requires institutional leadership and regulatory foresight. It is my privilege to now invite Shri Sushant Kumar Purohit, Chairman, VOC Port Authority, Tuticorin, to deliver the thematic address.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rasmi sir, Program Director, Green Shipping TERI, distinguished guests and gentlemen, ladies. At the outset, I am apologetic for late arrival because I had been stuck off some review meeting with our Honorable Minister. And also, I am very grateful to TERI and NCoEGPS for giving me this permission to participate in this World Sustainable Development Summit. And just now we heard our DG Shipping and the presentation, which was of course very much in detail about what the ministry is doing and DG Shipping is doing, and of course with the support of TERI and NCoEGPS. A lot of work has been done on the sustainable field in the ports and maritime sector in the recent past. In fact, for the last 2 years, we had been a group in the port, and of course, I was the additional nodal officer for driving the green initiatives and pollution control. One of the group which was driving the this green initiatives in the maritime sector, and our Honorable Secretary, Ministry of Port Shipping Waterways was the when he was the chairman of IWA, he was leading that group, and of course with a lot of engagement that time we are having with TERI for this, and we've already published a document on the various initiatives that already has been done, what is on the way, and what is the way forward for meeting the Maritime India Vision 2030 and Maritime Amrit Vision 2047 targets. So in Tuticorin, specifically this presentation which I will be doing, it's for Tuticorin, and I don't know how many of the guests sitting here have visited Tuticorin, but I must say that it is a very beautiful location, beautiful geography, and it is not only a center of business attraction, but also a center of tourism. We have Kanyakumari, we have Rameswaram, we have Madurai, which is just 2 to 3 hours from our place. And I invite all of you to kindly come to our port. We will be hosting you, and we will take you around the port. Also, we will take you around the places which will be very much interested to see. So this port has a lot of strength. As you know, this port is an all-weather port, and because we are just enveloped by Sri Lanka, we don't get any cyclone. And in the recent cyclone, also the cyclone Ritawa, the port of Colombo, port of Cochin, and all our neighboring ports were closed, but we are working. So we work 24/7, 365 days, and most of the ports, they are closed for around 20 to 25 days in a year for the cyclones, but we don't close. Secondly, we are located on a rocky terrain. So once we do the capital dredging, then there is no need of maintenance dredging for maintaining the draft. So as a result of these two reasons, our cost of operation is one of the lowest. Our cost of operation only 30%, that is called operating ratio. We spend only 30 rupees to earn 100 rupees, which is one of the lowest among the major ports. And this is a port which is supported by 2 airports. Tuticorin is already there is an airport, and recently in the month of July, our Honorable Prime Minister dedicated the big airport there. And the runway length of Tuticorin port is more than that of Chennai. And also there is an airport at Madurai, which is about 1.5 hour distance from us, 150 kilometer, but we can drive in 1.5 hour. Excellent infrastructure, excellent road. And that Madurai airport also has daily connectivity to Dubai, Singapore, and Colombo. So that is international airport. Certainly Tuticorin airport also will become an international cargo port maybe. And this port is a port which is also a hub of green hydrogen and green offshore wind hub. So it is a hub of green hydrogen hub as well as the offshore windmill hub. So this port has so many advantages. And of course, Honorable Prime Minister has also in the last year had announced the offshore outer harbour, which will be coming shortly in a year period of 3 to 5 years, and then will become the transshipment hub of the country in the east coast. In the west coast, Mumbai is the transshipment hub. In the east coast, Tuticorin will be the transshipment hub. So it is the transshipment hub of cargo. It will be the. It is already the green hydrogen hub, and it is also the offshore wind energy hub. So these are the advantages. They are the geographical advantages of this port. So this is the vision that we have. We are the first port we produce the green hydrogen. Of course, in a very small quantity. We are producing 20 kg of green hydrogen, and we are not only producing the green hydrogen, but also utilizing it. We are generating power, and with that power, we are lighting the one street of our township, and also charging our electric vehicles that we are applying in our port. So, of course, the use of green hydrogen for electricity generation is not a very efficient way of utilizing green hydrogen. But since we have already constructed a pilot project, and there is no uptake at present, so we are utilizing it so that our people will be trained. It is a project which was told to us to construct as a technology demonstration. And on September 5th, on the birthday of our V.O. Chidambarnar, on whose name this port has been named, he is one of the most famous, not only a maritime leader, but also an freedom fighter, on whose name this port has been named, V.O. Chidambarnar. So he had a steam aviation company, and that was fighting against the British India Navigation Company that time in the pre-independence area. So we are the first port to produce green hydrogen. We are the first port to declare ourselves plastic free. If you Google the first plastic free port in the country, V.O. Chidambarnar port will come. And of course, we have the first port to sign the MOU with Government of Tamil Nadu for setting up the mega shipbuilding cluster, which will shortly will come. And we are a port which is completely powered by renewable power. And we are already scope 2 emission free. And now we are adding 6 megawatt of wind energy, and by that we will be offsetting entire carbon emission of our port, and will become carbon neutral. We are actually trying to become carbon negative, but by mid of this year we will become the carbon neutral. We are also setting up facility for methanol fuel bunkering, because now about 400 vessels are under construction, and about 100 vessels are already underwater, which is running on methanol. And this Tuticorin is very close to the EU to Far East. 97% of the navigation happens near Tuticorin, and we are expecting that by 2030 there will be requirement of about 1 million metric tons of green methanol bunkering requirement. So already we are doing the pilot bunkering facility, which will be ready by mid-March, and we will be doing a trial of pilot bunkering maybe in the month of May or June. And then we are also preparing ourselves for creating the bunkering capacity for 2030, which is about 1 million metric ton of green methanol bunkering will be required. So for that, we have already asked money from the Sagarmala 2.0, and we will try to create capacity before the actual demand arrives. So that we are planning. And of course, we are trying to become the digital and smart port. Already in the last 2 days back, Honorable Union Minister had come, and he has dedicated the digital twin of our port. So we have become the first digital twin port of the country. So already, of course, shipbuilding and other things are already lined up. Here, some of this small snapshot. I think this much may not be. I think if I go through this, it will be slightly late. So I will come direct to the subject. So these are our. So we have been not a very big port. We are a port which is consistently handling more than 40 million tons since the last 2 years, and we have mission 50 target. But it is a port which handles all type of cargo, not only container or bulk, but all type of cargo, except unlike other ports which are handling container or. So we cater to all type of trade requirements. So this is the hub, and of course we have already allotted the land for the various prospective project proponents, and by 2028 December 2028 or by early 2029 they will be setting up the facility for green hydrogen production. And this is the demonstration plant that I was mentioning. This is the green hydrogen plant which has been already in operation in our port, and this is the bunkering facility that we have been planning here. The truck will come with green methanol, and it will pump to the bunker, and from the bunker it will be pumped to the vessel on the jetty. And of course, when there is maintenance requirement there, that will be pumped out, and the truck will take out the balance bunkering requirements. This is one important pilot plant which we are planning in our port, which is from municipal solid waste to green methanol. So here, we will be utilizing 25 tons of municipal solid waste, and we will be producing about 8 kl of green methanol every day. And already we have tied up with Tuticorin municipality, which is producing about 75 tons of waste every day. And so there is a headache for them. They are not able to handle how they will handle this waste, and they are just putting in the landfill. So we will be utilizing this, and certainly in another 6 months of time, this will be ready in our port as a pilot project. On green mobility also we are working, and 2 days back we had a MOU signed with Tata Motors, and they are actually producing the green trucks, and we are now setting up another 2 megawatt of green hydrogen facility in our port, and those green hydrogen facility will be with the fueling arrangement, and with that we will be powering fueling about 40 green hydrogen trucks. So Tata Motors will provide us some free trucks, which we will be doing as a pilot, and then it will gradually, we will increase to 40 trucks, because we are utilizing 2,000 trucks. You are using 2,000 trucks every day that is plying in our port, and out of the 2,000, about 200 trucks are moving in the for intercutting in the inside the port, from the berth to the colliard, and from the colliard to the berth, like that. So those things we can certainly. This green hydrogen has one advantage over the electric truck, is that electric truck has a downtime, but this will not have the downtime. And these are some of the decarbonization initiatives, as I mentioned: e-mobility, CNG adoption, domestic switch, renewable energy, green marine, and equipment electrification. These already we have been doing. And of course, green buildings, so to speak, green mobility, green corridor, already I have told. And this is the evolution of renewable energy. We just started from 2015, and now we have already crossed 8 megawatt of solar power, and 2 megawatt of wind, and then of course we are adding another 6 megawatt wind, and then 8 megawatt of wind again we are adding with battery electric storage system, and with that also will become the first port to have the battery electric storage system, so that we can utilize the solar power directly, and we can give the solar power directly to the ship through ship-to-ship arrangement. So we are already scope to carbon emission. We are already scope to carbon emission free port, and we will be trying to become carbon. And of course, we are also trying to get carbon credits. So all the projects, about 8 projects, we have already registered for earning carbon credits, and which we will be getting shortly, maybe in a year time. And also that will offset our finance. That will also give us some financial gains. So this is the methanol I just mentioned, about 1 million metric ton of green methanol bunkering requirement will be there by 2030, for which we are already working. And these are the certifications that we have recently got. Our administrative building has got the platinum IGBC building rating, and we are the first port where the administrative building has got the platinum rating of IGBC. And of course, we are already working on ISO 55001, and we will be getting shortly. And we have also 4 number of buildings in our port, including the hospital, which has got Shunya Plus certification. That means those buildings don't consume any power. They consume negative power, because the amount of renewable energy they generate, that is more than the consumption. So Bureau of Energy Efficiency, they have given the certifications to the 4 buildings of our port. So these are some of the things that we have been doing in the port. And of course, we are actually trying to have also tie up with all the developed ports in the country, so that we can assess our gap, and we can become, update ourselves, and to become, because we have been working in all the fields, not only in the cargo, but not only in the green, but also in the AI and IT, so that we can become the best in class in the maritime sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for those insightful reflections. With this, we conclude our introductory session of our thematic track. And before we commence with the discussion, I would request a photo op for for our honorable dignitaries on the dais with our esteemed speakers and our distinguished moderator. Let me make this opportunity to invite on the dais our esteemed panelist, Mr. Amrish Bansal, Senior Vice President, Lords Registrar Advisory, Mr. Amlan Bora, Chief Representative, India, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh at the Port of Rotterdam Authority, Mr. Anil Devli, CEO, Indian National Ship Owners Association, Dr. Pyali Das, Associate Director, TERI, Captain Prashant S. Vij, Director, Maritime, and Executive Director, Smart Freight Center.
May I also request Commander Dhawan and Mr. Prasad Naik, who have joined us as discussants, to kindly join us for this photo op. Right, thank you, Rahul. Let's get to the business end of this session. After having heard those words of wisdom from those three dignitaries that we had today, I think we are all aware that despite all the geopolitical tensions that are going on, some maverick politicians in places taking some decisions, global trade continues to grow. Global trade continues to grow at the rate of almost 2 to 2.2%. This is not some statistics that is being quoted. This is from the UNCTAD review of maritime transport that comes out year on year. So that's the kind of growth that is happening. And obviously, at the center of this entire thing sits what is we are going to discuss today, ports. Now, as Mr. Rashmi mentioned earlier, it would be unwise to think of ports as separate entities. We need to look at them as complete ecosystems. There are several interfaces which happen in the port ecosystem. To start with, if you look at, there's an interface between the aquatic environment and the ambient. There is an interaction between what is non-green operations and activities and green operations and activities. There is an interaction between the mode of transport itself, because what comes to port is by water, maritime. What goes out from the port or what comes into port to go out again could be many modes. It could be air, it could be rail, it could be road. In some cases, it could be also inland waterways or feeder services. And finally, what we must never forget, which the DG Shipping mentioned, the human element, the coastal communities who are around the port. So put together, there are many more such interfaces, but to put together and to analyze this, I think we couldn't have asked for a more stellar panel than that is assembled here on stage today. I understand Mr. Amlan Bora has to catch a flight and has requested that if he could, be allowed to deliver his opening remarks. Just in case. All right, as convenient to you, sir. If that is the case, then I would stick to the alphabetical order, if that's okay with you. Sure. So then we have Mr. Amrish Bansal, who's Senior Vice President, LR Advisory. He very pointedly told me that it is not classification services alone, and it is advisory. I take your suggestion, sir, and the floor is all yours. May I request all the speakers to kindly restrict your opening remarks to, say, about 5 minutes. Then we can have some follow-up questions, and then we can open it up to the floor.
Okay. I hope you can hear me. Okay. Thanks. Thanks for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone here. First thing first, I think thanks, TERI, for inviting me and putting together this fantastic show here. As DG Shah mentioned in the beginning, I think India has a huge opportunity in our hand, and port is definitely one of the key element of that. And frankly, when I see port, I don't see port as a standalone infrastructure or a logistic asset. For me, this is more of a ecosystem, which is primarily a strategic engine for energy transition, urban resilience, and economic competitiveness. I think that's what port sits for me, or stands for me rather. And I think this is what I am seeing globally, because since I look after global consulting business for Lloyd's, and port is definitely driving country's economy in big sense. And I think India is on verge of it, but yeah, a lot of things to be done now. When I see from the ESG and from sustainability lens, I think there are a lot of things which we can do as a country. And as DG sir mentioned, and VOC Port Chairman mentioned, I think we are seeing some pilot projects happening in those lines, but still, I think long way to go, I would say. And the good news is we have seen these transformation across the globe. We have, I have a person from Port of Rotterdam, so I think he will be talking about how the ports in Europe, the Port of Rotterdam, Port of Antwerp, how they are doing, especially how they have transformed into energy hub by integrating the carbon capture, hydrogen into their corporate strategy. Similarly, some of the ports in US, Port of LA or Long Beach, they have shown the world how ports can be benefited through shore power and electrification. So we have some success stories with us, which definitely we can leverage and look at. And definitely the policy aspect is a key, because it's as I said, it's not an infrastructure. For me, it's more of an integration. And I think the moderator also mentioned about, port is a wider ecosystem where we need to work with the cargo owners, energy suppliers, financial institutes, ship owners, shipyards, the wider community around your port. So it really becomes important how we integrate all these things together, how we come together and support this ecosystem to grow. So I think these are my initial remarks, but definitely I'm happy to take some questions and probably detail it out. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Mr. Amlan?
It's a very broad topic. We're talking about decarbonization. First of all, we are living at a time when a lot of leaders, world leaders, have different opinions about decarbonization, and sometimes it takes the discussion away from what we should be doing to something else. But we are from the Netherlands. We fully understand the impact of climate change. We are amongst the tallest people. I'm not a representative sample of that when you talk about height. I'm just 5 feet 7 inches. But in spite of being the tallest people in the world, we realize that we just cannot sit idle and do nothing about what's going on from a climate perspective to be able to survive and to be able to exist. So for us, decarbonization is the word, and then there are two aspects to it, of course. Low carbon, and then replacing carbon with something else. And then if you look at our port, a port can have three broad roles. A port can be a gateway port, as in like receiving goods and then distributing those goods to the market that it fits. A port can be a transshipment hub, gets in things, packs, repacks, and sends it to other destinations. And a port can be an industrial hub as well. For us in Rotterdam, we are all three, which means when you talk of us as a port, we are actually, we are not a port, we are a port authority as an organization, but then we are responsible for a port, which is the biggest port in Europe, and which has three heads: industrial complex, gateway port, and transshipment hub. We also have two other ports that we manage in Brazil, in Passim, and in Sohar, in Oman. But let's not talk about those two today. Focus on the core activities in Rotterdam. So when you talk about decarbonization, our priorities span across the entire supply chain. Our priorities and our activities, of course, also connect to those activities from source, from picking up something at the source, till the point the products land on our shores in Rotterdam. Then our activities, of course, include the activities that we do inside the port, and then include those which are outside of the port, as in like serving the hinterland. When you talk about activities outside of the port, both incoming and outgoing, then those are basically partnerships that we build. Partnerships to facilitate the dialogue, partnerships to facilitate the transition, and partnerships to decarbonize. As an example, I have 5 minutes, so I'll be brief. As an example, when you talk about shipping, like ocean shipping, then we are talking about building corridors. Port of Rotterdam is the second biggest bunkering hub in the world, and the first one is Singapore. So a lot of ships, most of the ships would bunker in one of these two locations. So we are building a green corridor between Port of Rotterdam and Port of Singapore, and then we are partnering with shipping lines like Maersk, MSC, all the big ones, that, okay, let us transition and let us create for you the infrastructure so that you can bunker a more sustainable fuel. And as a port, if you do the right things, we are here to support you by providing you a more economic profitability model. As an example, different classifications of ships are done, indices are created, we have different prizes, awards that we give to ships and shipping lines. If somebody has a platinum green award, then we said, okay, you're a good boy, No need to pay the port dues till you stay as platinum. Those kind of things. So the same partnerships we build for the hinterland connectivity. We are saying we're asking for our barges. We have 91,000 inland water vessels calling on our port every year. So that's a huge number. So we are telling these inland water vessel companies that we want you to transition as well to something more sustainable. And just telling them is not enough. But we are providing them the ecosystem. We are providing the partnerships. We are looking at technology solutions so that they can do this transition. Norway and Netherlands are working together so that we can develop and provide plug-in, plug-in solution for hydrogen fuel in the inland water vessels, as an example. We are creating infrastructure for hydrogen trucks within the port, things like that. Now, within the port, there are two things to that again. One, decarbonization, the basic aspect is through being more operationally efficient. And there are things like running trucks on sustainable fuel like hydrogen, creating parking bays for inland vessels so that they do not keep on moving around and create carbon congestion and more carbon kind of footprint. Offshore power, those things we are doing. But equally, we are a port. We're not restricting our industries to grow in a certain direction because we are a port. Like the two speakers have said, we are part of an ecosystem. We are a node in this ecosystem. So we do not want to steer any disruption. And the philosophy that we adapt not to create any disruption is two things. First of all, the 3 A's. Anything that we'll do, anything that we promote to do should be guided by the 3 A's. The first one is available. Only adopt available technologies. Affordable, because if the cost goes up, then there's a disruption happening. And the third is allowed. Only do things which are allowed under the present set of regulations. Of course, there is nothing is written in stone. Regulations need to be developed.
I must interrupt and tell you what is not available to us is too much of time.
Yes, just 1 minute and then I'll wind up. Because the last point, I'll cut it down. The last point is very important because when you talk about decarbonization, we as Port of Rotterdam put a lot of emphasis on one aspect, which is getting the security for critical raw minerals, critical raw materials. Because whatever we talk about is not going to be achievable if we do not have access to that particular product. And as a port, we are putting in a lot of emphasis in creating the ecosystem. We have an ecosystem, but to develop it further. I'll stop at that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And my apologies for interrupting you. Mr. Anil, please.
Thank you. So mindful of the fact that we are running short of time, few points. First of all, I think in this room I am the least informed as far as green technologies are concerned. I represent ship owners. We are in the business of moving cargo, and we understand it is now our corporate responsibility to ensure that we move cargo in the lowest or the smallest footprint that we can. A ship owner's life is full of anxiety. Don't look at my colleagues sitting here. I talk about a small Indian ship owner. Life is full of anxiety because of the uncertainties that Indian shipping faces. And it is forums like this, forums like this, where we get to learn, we get to understand what we should be doing further. I would just like two important points in my opening thing is, one is, are we becoming an echo chamber? When I speak or Prashant speaks or Mr. Bose speaks, but we are just talking to one another. Really, the people who should be listening should be available. And as ship owners, we don't see this getting traction outside our industry. I'll give you a small example, and this is something that TERI could look at, is that recently the Department of Economic Affairs floated a paper for green sovereign bonds, and they are applicable to transportation. And I was amazed to see that water transport is absent out of it. So our own government also doesn't seem to want to focus. We keep talking, and we are talking amongst ourselves. So this is the other third anxiety that I would like to flag is the non-availability of resources for us to be able to decarbonize.
So thank you, Mr. Anil. We'll try and ensure that you sleep better at night and have less worries. We will convey your point and let it not become an echo chamber, as you rightly point out. We will be conveying these points in a formal manner to the ministry, and thereafter following it up with the ministry to ensure that it meets its desired end. Dr. Das, if I may kindly request you.
Can you repeat your question or opening remarks with this? Okay. So you can stop me anytime because I should not cross 5 minutes. So I'll talk mostly about the green fuel because we just recently completed a study under Ministry of Port Shipping and Waterways. So one of the study which took 1.5 years, so like no, we were thinking that we are too deep studying and all, because there is so much even after the study also still like we are facing all over the world that at least I can talk about the India, all the stakeholders that. In every conference and workshops and reports, there are so many reports today on this alternate fuel which should be adapted for the maritime. And when I'm saying, mostly I'm talking about the coastal and OGVs, like ocean going. So because in the inland water, it's a different things, their hydrogen still works and other things. So after all the conference, if somebody attend 10 conference, that person become 10 times more confused. So, so because all the reports, even we see the way we started also, so it is all contradicting and it is really not going anywhere. So somehow it justified our very in-depth study. And then we wanted to see that some of the studies, they said, okay, this is a supply chain is there. So it is a good fuel, so you should bunker this and it should be adopted first. Then we are seeing the last 2 years, the way this, it was fast track that IMO's this GFI based framework which has been developed in April 2025 onwards, we're all talking about. And so that completely changed the things, the way we look at the fuels. So some of the fuels were giving an example, even ammonia we are always talking about. So we are always saying it's a very green fuel and this. But the moment it is coming to well-to-wake kind of things, then again, how much well-to-wake it is green. Because the upstream, when we are looking at the production processes and all, so then all the things. But for everybody, it is not very easy to understand and follow all these pathways and all. So there were a point it was needed, and that's a responsibility was given to us, that let us really compare this fuel and make a kind of ranking of this fuel or fuel blend, looking at the global trend and what is happening, not only from the fuel perspective, but how the adoption, what is the ecosystem for alternative fuel engines, or it needs the engine change, or even the fuel cell, whatever way we can do. What about the those policies, the safety protocols and all. So then we arrived at actually with 8 sustainability parameters, so that we are very technology agnostic and all. So when we look from these 8 sustainability parameters, so I'll just touch in 1 or 2 minutes. So we felt that it is not only the supply chain or the feedstock supply chain of that, it is also the GFI value of that fuel that is over well-to-wake, how it is made and how much after burning it is. So in the overall that LCA, so how much it is green from that perspective, how much it is reducing the, again it is related, reducing the overall GHG emission, and with respect to the target given in that framework, so with respect to that how it is performing. Then also all these fuels, I mean some are very cryogenic storage it needs, some needs like a methanol, it is in a room temperature, it is liquid. So this kind of easiness of the storage and handling and this one there. Also from the looking from the perspective of the upscaling point of view, so even the confidence of these fuel makers will come when they see that how many ports globally, that ecosystem is, that infrastructure is there for the bunkering. It may be a very difficult bunkering, but if it is already more than 50 bunkering places it has been done, it gives today the technology can can go anywhere, I mean, so adoption and that. So from that perspective, so all these 8 parameters we have given, and then we have arrived at what is with respect to these 8 parameters, how any fuel of these alternative fuels, there are around 7 to 8 alternative fuels, methanol, ammonia, hydrogen, even there are different kind of hydrogen, blue hydrogen, green hydrogen. Similarly for the the other fuels, e-fuels, biofuels, all these options. Then we have seen what is those GFI values at this moment, but that definitely can, So that's the way we have come, and then we have ranked the fuels. So anybody can, with a lot of confidence, can adapt from looking at that 8 sustainability parameters, so that they can never, the chance of accident is very less. So that we can talk more about it.
Thanks, Dr. Das. You mentioned confusion because of so many studies. Today is the era of mother of all deals happening. So I guess a mother of all studies is called for. That's on a lighter note. May I now request Captain Prashant to share some wisdom.
Yeah, thank you. There's always an advantage when you come last on the panel, right? Especially because you've heard and I want to make sure that I'm not repeating myself. I think enough has been spoken about ports not just being infrastructure, but actually being system integrators, right? In my experience being in maritime shipping logistics for the past 25 years, and more recently for the last 15 odd years at Maersk, we have had the experience together with APM terminals of looking at how terminals are operating across the globe and bringing those expertise into what India then requires, right? And I'll speak a little bit more about India because there's a lot that has been spoken from Rotterdam as an example, but there's actually a lot of great stuff happening in India already. And we heard about what BOCP Chairman Purohitji mentioned, but as APM terminals, there have been two terminals, one in Navasheva, one in Pipavav, that we have, and both of these terminals have basically applying the reduce, replace, decarbonize, and I'll speak a little bit more about it, have been able to actually knock out close to 80% of Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, right? And this is happening here on the ground in our country, right? When it comes to reduce, the focus is on efficiency, right? So it's really about energy management and a bunch of other opportunities that offers. When it comes to replace, it really is about focusing on electricity and renewable and opportunities through that. And eventually, when it comes to decarbonize, is where we're actually looking at virtual purchase power agreements, solar rooftops, and a bunch of similar initiatives, right? But what is the missing link also, not just globally, but also here in India, is Scope 1 and 2 is what can be controlled by the terminals. Scope 3 is the elephant in the room, not just for global shipping, but including ports and terminals. And not enough is being done about it. And this is exactly where we come in the space here, because 50% of emissions today that of Scope 3 are through drayage and hinterland trucks. And there are pilots on EVs and stuff between a port and a terminal all the way to the CFS or the ICD. But even today, 99% of the trucks that are moving across terminals into the ICDs, CFSs, and beyond are IC trucks. And that needs to move towards EVs, right, eventually. And of course, if it was easy, it would have already been done. Because it's challenging, it's fun, and that's also where we come in the equation, right? This is what Smart Freight Center does. Smart Freight Center is a Dutch organization in the business of decarbonizing logistics across modes, road, rail, shipping, as well as aviation. And this also gives you an opportunity to actually cut across the ecosystem, understand the pain points from an ecosystem approach. Using the emissions accounting framework that we have in-house, we are able to actually map ports and terminals on emissions on a baseline perspective, and then very objectively go down to that level of granularity on making sure that we can be transparent and credible and reduce emissions, right? And also come out with EVs and opportunities through our partnerships. One last intervention in that regard that I would like to mention is the fact that we can only do this with partnerships. And some of the pain points that we heard in terms of being an echo chamber and hydrogen green fuel hubs and stuff like that is where we have, in our member community, we actually have shippers. So some of the shipping names that we spoke about are a part of our community. We have carriers, which are the cargo owners in that way. So the cargo owners, the carriers. We also have the financial stakeholders. So when I hear that sovereign gold green bonds, we have the Poseidon Principle banks as part of our member community. So we actually can talk a little bit more about that in the next round. But partnership with policymakers, all of this actually is what we bring to the table collectively. But I'll pause here.
Thanks. I wasn't giving you dirty looks. I was just politely telling you that we need to get on to the next round. Just coming to you, Mr. Bansal, Lloyd's is well known for many things, but one of your key expertise areas has been risk management. Would you like to share some perspective from Lloyd's advisory in terms of the risk management techniques that you apply in so far as greening, because greening requires a huge amount of finance. Whilst it is all nice to have green, but to get going in the green sense requires a huge amount of finance. And there's a definite risk involved, and there are not many players or risk takers, so to say. So how do you see this evolving?
Okay, thanks for this question. So it was not in the list, I believe. So, so I probably will cover the broader perspective, not only the risk. I think risk is definitely an important element, as you said. I probably would cover the wider ESG or sustainability aspect, which I think a no-brainer for major banks. So when we talk about these decarbonization initiatives, whether you talk about shore power, whether you talk about electrification, whether you talk about renewable source of power, you need investment, you need money, and a big chunk of money, I would say. So definitely banks, investors play a definite important role. And I think the good news is, so there are climate funds, multilaterals, especially World Bank, ADBs of the world. And fortunately, we have been working with them very closely, not only for the ports, in fact, the entire value chain, supporting the value chain, because as I said in the beginning, it's not, you cannot have a green port without, greening everything else. So it's more of an integration. So we have been working with these agencies very closely. And I think one of the key mandate now for them is, if they really want to invest a single penny in any infrastructure or any, it could be greenfield or brownfield, they need to understand the ESG landscape of that company or organization. So I think they are primarily getting into the environmental, social due diligence, which is become mandatory before they really invest. So we support these banks and work with banks, whether it is port or whether it is any other asset across maritime, to conduct those assessments. And based on our recommendations, they really take a call whether they should invest or not. Second, I think one of my fellow panelists touch upon the green financing or green corridor rather, sorry. I think that is becoming really critical. In fact, as LR, we are facilitating Silk Alliance. This is a green corridor primarily based in Singapore. And I think over the years, what we have done, we have brought all the stakeholders, including ship owners, shipbuilders, technology players, banks, technology enablers, and now it's really working well. It's primarily bring all the people together, and try to see how they can reduce risk, because if one person will take, or one individual or organization will take this responsibility, it will be a risky affair. So I think the best way is to form these kind of green corridors. I think the good example is Japan and Singapore. I think recently, a few years ago, they have signed a MOU, and I think it's really working well. And I think one more element which has been added recently is, it's not only green shipping, it's green digital corridor now. And I see a big opportunity for India, especially on the eastern coast, like, for example, the Vizag port. I think if they can have something with the Far East, sort of a corridor, I think this can really influence the investment decision, because banks, what I have seen, banks are more comfortable investing in the ports where, if you are part of a green corridor, because they know things are happening on ground, you have a plan, and that will also help you to enable, other decarbonization elements like shore power and other things. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Mr. Bora, coming to you, Port of Rotterdam, of course, SFC and Port of Rotterdam are looking at dredge in a very big way. And I would be asking you, how does our own PM's e-drive, e-truck initiative, how can we put it on into our Indian ecosystem? But to you, Mr. Bora, Port of Rotterdam is also looking at very large-scale carbon capture systems. You are also looking at the use of something called as geopolymer concrete in the building of new jetties and new marine infrastructure. You are also offering 500,000 euros to ships with a better, greener footprint. So, looking at all this and looking at the part of sustainability, where exactly are you driving it at to be carbon neutral, as you have claimed, as what your website says? And insofar as the materials for construction is concerned, how are you looking at it in the overall sense?
That's a very specific question. I would not be able to answer that specifically. But broadly speaking, like I said, our target to be carbon neutral is 2050. Same for Netherlands as a country. And we see our role in multiple stages and multiple parts of the supply chain or the value chain, which will catalyze this decarbonization drive. One of you mentioned about risk. I'll give an example which is from a different setup, but that explains the role we are trying to play. In the 1960s, when the first container port was set up in a port in, I think in a port in Louisiana or something in the US, it didn't pick up any traction. Nobody was interested. Containers were a strange thing. We as Port of Rotterdam decided to invest in a container port ourselves, and that was the first ECT port which we set up. Nobody showed interest, and then within 5 years, people started showing the benefits of moving things inside a container, and then investor after investor, people started coming. So same role. A lot of things that you're talking about are pretty new, including concretes, including other things, including fuel adaptation for different applications. So for an organization like us, we are a port authority. We are owned by the government. We are very open in two areas. First of all, we are very open, and we do see our role in driving the right conversations in multilateral organizations like the IMO, Ports and Harbor Associations, for us the European Union, but also bilaterally. And secondly, of course, wherever required, through our partners or through ourselves, bringing in those financial incentives so that the conversations that we are taking actually gets towards a real action.
Right. Thank you so much. Mr. Anil, you mentioned about green sovereign bonds and the Department of Economic Affairs coming up. Now, if one was to ask you what would be your wish list, I would just like to leave it open to you. So if one was to ask from a very financial perspective in terms of green finance backing or investments or support that you as the INSA or as the ship owner, what is it that you would really like, and how much is it already existing with the recent announcements, though not very many, but about 75,000 crores has been announced in various tranche shares. So how would you like to play it?
So first, at the outset, that 75,000, nothing is coming to green.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's all going to shipbuilding,
Shipbuilding,
etc., etc. So very quickly, again, bearing in mind the time, what is the wish list is that today to go green, it costs a lot of money. That's the bottom line, right? Yeah. We talk about corridors. If you have to run a corridor, then the charterer or the cargo interest has to take that cost. So somebody has to pay that additional cost. If it is expected that the ship owner pays that additional cost, frankly, there are very few companies in India who can, on their own balance sheet, sustain that, right? Then you have nations applying premiums, ETS, for example, EU ETS. So every time my vessel goes, I have to pay something. So all of this is going to cost money. When you're looking at adapting, if I say I'll adapt some technology, I don't know which technology to adapt. Again, confusion, we don't know where we are going. Is it ammonia, is it hydrogen, etc. So we don't know that. If you decide also to adopt a technology, for example, batteries, we adopted that in the port, DG touched on it. Our members have now placed orders for 12 of these battery trucks. But those trucks can only operate for 6 hours. So now you're going to need perhaps 3 times the number of tugs that you are operating at a port. You're going to require that. How are you going to get the money for that? So everything finally boils down to money. I can go on, in this list. So again, I'm mindful of time. So I think the wish list is only this, that wherever either the IMO or the government of India or we as a community, as Captain Rich spoke, if as a community we decide to do something, then it is not possible for the Indian ship owner to sustain this on his own. And the government needs to step in and support. Just like he said, they are, as an arm of the government, they are doing certain things. We believe that there is a need for financial aid to the smallest ship owner. I would say, in fact, start with the smallest ship owner upwards, and help them do this transition. This transition needs to be not just for the seafarer, not just for the ships, but for the ship owner also. So that would be my sum and substance of what I want to say.
Right. Thank you. That was diplomatically put. Right. Coming to you, Dr. Das, there's this whole discussion going on about alternative fuels and the orders that are being placed. There is also this parallel discussion going on about the huge mismatch between supply and demand. Both sides claiming we are ready. So how would you put it in the Indian perspective?
Yes, I'll share this, but one disclaimer before that, because generally I use slides. So today you said because of the time we can't use slides. So keeping a lot of data in my head is a very difficult thing. So sometimes it gets mixed inside. So that's what I'll try to answer it, not absolute value, but in a percentage wise. So if we look, because we looked from all these alternative fuels, we also looked at the age and type of the vessels India is having. Especially again, I'm restricting to coastal and OGVs. And so it's so much of data was there. And internationally, how the trend is, so more than 0.12 million data we have processed. So anyway, coming back to the India, this when we look at this, what we have done, first we have done the demand assessment. So like I will give an example, if we have to check that what is the maximum limit of green methanol maybe needed for transitioning through green methanol, our OGVs are coastal, what is the maximum limit? So anything below that is okay. So that's the way we have done for all the monofuels, and then we have done for different where the blend is possible, that kind of blend fuels. So I will tell you today, so we look at 2030 and 35, and that's the way, because up to 35 the compliance has come. So when we looked at 2030, so today, that's what percentage wise I might be right, absolute value I might be wrong. So if I look at ammonia, so 2030 what we need, and I'm talking about everything transitioning only through green ammonia. So that is the maximum limit we can produce. So there today only up to 0.5% of what we need 2030 we are producing today. But the way ammonia plants which is FID has been done, and it is going to come by 2030, almost 56 to 55 times of what we need by 2030, we are there. So it looks very lucrative. So then we can say that go for ammonia, because 56 times, so we can really export a lot of ammonia after meeting our thing. If we look at methanol, so the way, again, transitioning all through methanol, like green methanol, like e-methanol. So I'll talk about more about the e-methanol, biomethanol also little bit. So only just the data. So from the methanol, because you asked about the supply demand, so I have to answer for at least 4 fuels. So for the methanol, today we are making around only 3% of the methanol, what we need, if the whole transition through methanol is required, by 2030 what we need, 3% we are producing. Only 3% of what we need. But what is in FID again, and which is under which is beyond concept stage, so then we can be around 2.5 to 3 times of what we need by 2030. So at least 3 times of what we need by 2030 is possible if the policies are more conducive, what is under FID and all, so those people will be encouraged to really turn it to a plant. If we come to the hydrogen, so methanol and ammonia gone, if we come to the hydrogen, it is almost similar, like it is 7% of what we need by 2030. So it can also go to 4 to 5 times by 2030. So looking from this perspective, it looks that all these 3 will be available by 2030 with very kind of growth conducive kind of policies, especially for scaling up of these fuels. So ammonia is too much is available, methanol and all will be available. But the ecosystem, to use those ammonia, we don't have those engines. Even looking at the order book, so that does not completely mix and match. Don't mix and match. Similarly for methanol, it is more, this one though, it is only 4 times or 2.5 times. So all this fuel perspective, if we see, it is all possible to achieve this maximum value by 2030. Only we need that kind of policy push for upscaling this. But we have to look for other infrastructure, whether we have those engines, we have the other ecosystems in place. So looking for them, so I will only restrict to the fuel part.
Right. Thank
so
you.
It is
Yeah. Thank you so much. Captain Prashant, as I mentioned, as you said, SFC is involved in Dryage, and you've actually teamed up with Portobello. Of course, you are a Netherlands-based company also. Now, looking at the India's PM's e-drive, e-truck initiative, which is being looked at as ports because the number of trucks that go in and out of ports. How do you think it can be implemented, and what are the lessons you would like the Indian ecosystem to imbibe so that it can be implemented in real quick time?
Right. I think, first of all, the policy framework is very strong today that we have in India. And I have to commend the government to be able to do that, including the Ministry of Port Shipping Waterways and the work that TERI does together in that regard, right? I think this conversation, which is clearly pivoting, is about the chicken and egg, right? And we've heard about this. I mean, at Maersk, we were the first ones putting out green methanol ships. We are agnostic of fuels. We knew that there will be ammonia, LNG, and others coming in. But the idea was very clear that we cannot keep waiting for the silver bullet, because in the energy transition ecosystem, there will never be a silver bullet, right? And the same goes for the dryage opportunities, right? I think what's very important here is that no one stakeholder, to the point that Anil made, no one stakeholder can actually bear the brunt of this. And it has to be a shared value proposition. Expecting governments to fund this, I think, is foolhardy. And this is where we come in, right? As Smart Trade Center, because we sit with the shippers, we are actually having IKEAs, Amazons, Unilevers, a bunch of the others, basically the ones who eventually, whose goods we're going to purchase, are the ones who are willing to actually lean out, right? And the moment the shippers start to be bearing a significant part of the cost, comes the carriers and the ship owners. And then they are, of course, going to be, their customers, who are the shippers, start to demand this, and then it starts to fuel, right? So it's really a top-down cascade. Every stakeholder in the ecosystem needs to bring their pound of flesh to the table. That's the only way sustainable energy transition will happen. And expecting governments to give out incentives, subsidies, free lunches is not a sustainable model, right? And this is how we come in and really build these ecosystem partnerships. We start with establishing transparency in emissions data and earning credibility. That's what ports and terminals need. We then get to measuring baseline data and trying to work towards reducing it. That's what makes it investment ready, right? So the banks are willing to invest in you. Sustainable finance, responsible investments are real words. Every bank is under pressure to green their portfolios, right? And in that, if you are ahead of the game, and this is where, as India, as we start to map these, when we have a nationalized port emissions data accounting, which is what we will collaborate on, is where we start to actually progress further in that ecosystem. And eventually, if you incentivize all of this, you will drive behavioral change. And that's what I would like to end with.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, I must apologize for being a spoil sport to bring this discussion to an end, a very interesting discussion. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. And at this point, it is only my humble request to all of you to put your hands together for a thunderous applause to all our extremely able panelists. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you to all our speakers, dignitaries, and participants for contributing to such a substantive exchange. The conversation on maritime decarbonization does not end here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
If you request for a group photo, please. Sir.
I'm sorry, we ran out of time. We could not use the benefit of your advice.
But confusion is the first step before clarity.
Revati.
Exactly. Yeah. No, but I agree with this. Virtuous cycle of confusion. It is.